Okay guys, so I have officially reached 100 videos. This will be my 100th video. So in celebration of that, I will be showing you guys my fleet of HO scale locomotives. So we'll start with this guy right here. This is an Atlasalco S1. This is a Chicago Great Western locomotive at number 12. And he's equipped with DCC. He's unfortunately the locomotive is too old and too small to be equipped with a sound decoder, which is a bit of a shame, but oh well, at least he's still DCC. So let's move on to the next locomotive. Okay, so this locomotive is a Walthers Proto 2000 EMD SW1200. This is Chicago Northwestern number 1281. On one side it says route of the streamliners, and on the other side it says route of the 400s. This locomotive is in an older paint scheme where the ends are striped. As you can see, it doesn't necessarily fit with my era. However, when this came out, this was a limited edition, and this was made specifically for the CNIB Historical Society members, and fortunately, I was lucky enough to be one of them, and I purchased this guy, and I am very happy about that. So it doesn't necessarily fit with my era, however, I'll find some use for him. Right now, he's just in yard service. But this locomotive is equipped with DCC, and just like the previous model, no sound. Okay, so this third locomotive is a Ather Genesis EMD GP15-1. This is Chicago Northwestern number 4423. Some of you guys might recognize him from one of my previous HO scale videos. And he is equipped with DCC and Tsunami sound. I really enjoy this locomotive. This is one of my favorite locomotives. However, I don't run them too much just because track gets dirty real fast, and this locomotive can be kind of picky. But he's still one of my favorite engines, and when it comes to special occasions, I normally get him out. So, yeah, let's move on to the next locomotive. This next locomotive is a Atlas Trainmen GP38-2, number 4606, Chicago Northwestern paint. This is one of two Atlas Trainmen GP38-2s I have. This guy is DCC equipped, but no sound. As some of you can see, I lost the horn on this one. My cat Theo, was a little curious with this locomotive and decided to take a little bite. And unfortunately, he bit the horn off. Isn't that right, Theo? He's standing right next to me. But, I'll get around to fixing that one day, but right now it's alright. This is my other Atlas Trainmen GP38-2. This is identical to 4606 except for numbers, 4614. And the other key feature is that it has a horn. Theo didn't bite this one off. This guy is just like 4606, DCC equipped, except this guy has a Digitrax sound decoder. Now I'm not going to fire him up, and unfortunately I can't because right now he's having some issues while he's running. For some reason he doesn't want to run. So I need to take a look at that. But he still is a nice locomotive, and when latched up with 4606, they make a great pair. So this is my third and final GP38-2. This is an Ather ready to roll model, number 4625. And unlike the two Atlas models, this guy is in the Zyto yellow scheme, or safety yellow. As you can see, he's missing the front handrail. That was a result of a minor derailment that happened. I'll get around to fixing that one day, but I'm kind of lazy, so I usually put things like that aside for a while. But he is DC only. Unfortunately, this locomotive is probably not going to get a DCC decoder. But who knows. But right now he's kind of old. He's not quick plug equipped, so it's going to be quite a bit more of a hassle. And but I mean, overall he runs fine, but there's just quite a few things that are somewhat preventing me from upgrading this locomotive to DCC, but I'll get around to it one day. So this next locomotive is a Kato SD38-2. I know a lot of people out there say Kato. I call it Kato just because that's how the employees at Kato USA pronounce it, so that's how I pronounce it. Anyway, this is a Chicago Northwestern 6652. This guy will eventually be getting DCC and possibly sound, but right now he's DC only. Like the two GP38-2s, 4614 or 4606, this guy's in the Operation Lifesaver paint scheme. And this is actually the first locomotive that I had. I had this guy ever since I got one of my first HO scale layouts. So he's been on the fleet longer than just about every other locomotive here, except for a couple of old Bachmann things that are down in the basement. But yeah, a nice locomotive, runs very well, and eventually he will be getting DCC and possibly sound. So for those of you who've seen any of my other HO scale videos, you'll probably recognize this locomotive. This is my other SD38-2 from Kato. This is number 660, Elgin, Joliet, and Eastern. This is in the J-ball scheme. This is, now for those of you who know the J, you'll recognize that 660 was not a J-ball when CN bought it, and that is correct. However, it was a J-ball during the CNW era, and thankfully Kato did that scheme, so therefore it fits in with my era. This locomotive is DCC and Digitrex sound decoder, and it's one of my favorite locomotives on my roster. This next locomotive is somewhat of an oddball. This is a Montana Raillink SD35 number 701. Now I'm pretty sure most of you are asking, why do you have a Montana Raillink locomotive when your layout is clearly set in the Midwest? And while Montana is not in the Midwest, well, some of you might consider it Midwest, but that's beside the point. Pretty much, this is, other than the CNW SD38-2 that I showed a bit earlier, this is the other old locomotive that I have on there. This is really before I had a setting, and it's a nice locomotive. In my opinion, it's a Atlas Master, no, Atlas Silver locomotive, and it's a beautiful model. And I'll just say that it was on lease to CNW, or maybe it was a run-through on their subsidiary I&M Raillink, except I&M wasn't around at the time. But I still like this locomotive. It has DCC, no sound. I might put sound in it at some point, but at the moment it's DCC only. So this locomotive is a Proto 2000 Alco RS27. Now, like the other Proto 2000 locomotive I have at switcher number 1281 I showed you earlier, this doesn't necessarily fit in with my era. However, like a lot of the other locomotives that I have, I got this before I had really an era set. And it was just a nice model, so I decided to pick it up. This is number 900, and this has some pretty nice detail on it, but at the moment it's DC only. Now, a few interesting facts about this locomotive. It's modeled after number 900, was only on the C&W roster for about 2 or 3 years before it was sold to the Peabody Coal Company. And from there, also another interesting feature is that it's got the notched front noses. The RS27 and the RS36, as far as I know, those are the only two short hood locomotives that Alco produced that had the noses notched on in the front. So yeah, it's a nice locomotive, and I hope to eventually put DCC and sound in it, but at the moment that's been kind of put on the back burner. This next locomotive is the Sacado F40 PH in the Regional Transportation, or RTA, paint scheme. This paint scheme was common on metro trains up until the mid-90s, about the time CNW was bought by UP. Granted, Metro came out for their own paint scheme in the late 80s, however you could still find locomotives such as number 135, which this one is, up until the mid-1990s in this RTA scheme. This locomotive is DCC and sound equipped. It's got a little Digitrex decoder in there. However, unfortunately, it doesn't match the prime mover, so I'm probably going to change it at some point. However, at the moment, it's fine by my standards. This is one of my favorite locomotives. This is my favorite passenger locomotive. Granted, it's my only passenger locomotive, but it's still, even if I have more, it's still one of my favorites. And I do have a little commuter train that goes with it. But I'll show you that in a different video. That'll be coming up sometime in the near future. This is a Ather ready to roll SD40. This is Chicago Northwestern number 884. 884 was actually one of the last SD40s on the CNIB roster to go. Sadly, unlike the Chicago Great Western SD40s, these guys were often scrapped. These guys were scrapped. The SD40s were sold off to a dealer, and then they eventually wound up on I&M Raillink. And then from there, Iowa, Chicago, and Eastern actually used them for a few years. However, sadly, as far as I know, all the CGW SD40s have been scrapped. But anyway, this guy has DCC, no sound. Might put some sound in him at a later point. But for those of you with eagle eyes, you'll notice that he has the back handrail missing. That is because of a derailment. In one of my previous layouts, I had a huge bridge, and for some odd reason, the bridge collapsed while this guy was going over it, and yeah, that fell off. And being my usual lazy self, I haven't gotten around to fixing it yet, but I'll do that at some point. So for those of you who haven't noticed the number on the side, this is where I get my YouTube username from. This is a Ather ready to roll SD40-2, Chicago Northwestern number 6871. This is in the Zyto yellow or safety yellow paint scheme. And this is a limited run, as far as I know, by the Ather put out. And because it was a limited run, Ather was kind enough to put the gong bell on there. Thank you, Ather. No one else does that at the moment. This locomotive has DCC only. I might put sound on him at some point, but at the moment that remains yet to be seen. Some other interesting features on this is that Ather put the strobe light on there, and it's got the safety stripes. When I bought this locomotive at a train show, I had three choices. There was 6857, 6871, and 6922. All three of them were in the Zyto yellow scheme. Now, 6922 was automatically out, and you'll see why in a few minutes. 6857 and 6871 were the only two other choices that I had. I chose 6871 because they had the safety stripes on it. And the safety stripes are these little yellow lines right below the walkway. 6857 did not have those, and I wanted to get 6857 at some random point, but unfortunately I don't think that's going to happen for a while. Okay, this is my other Ather and ready to roll SD40-2 from Chicago Northwestern. This is number 6876. This is in an older paint scheme than 6871. Other than that, though, they're pretty much the same. Nice locomotive. And like 6871, DCC only. Again, it's got the gong bell on it. Now, there is something interesting about this locomotive. 6876 doesn't necessarily fit in with my era. Well, not era, the location. That's because 6876 was one of a few SD40-2s that served on the ore line in the Upper Peninsula. It spent most of its life hauling taconite trains to the port at Escanaba, Michigan. However, I'll just say that it had to come down and spent some time down here for a little while. But in reality, it served on the up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and in northern Wisconsin. And I do have some video of that from a DVD, but that's beside the point. Anyway, nice locomotive, good running, DCC only, possibly a sound installation in the future. So this is another SD40-2. However, unlike the two Atherns, this is a Kato SD40-2. This is a Chicago and Northwestern number 6922. Unlike most of my other locomotives that were built maybe 2010, 2009, 2007-ish, this one was built back in early 2001, so it's a fairly old locomotive. And sadly, because of that, I'm not able to put a sound decoder in it. However, that doesn't matter. It's still a great locomotive. Now you notice that this has a gong bell and a strobe light, and I don't know if you can see it, but there's a radio antenna and custom U-hoses on there. All those that I just mentioned, they're custom details. Kato did not put those on the locomotive itself. Well, when it came out of the factory, there's a guy who works for Kato USA. I'm not going to mention his name, but he works for Kato USA, and he put those details on there. You'll also notice that this has the Falcon service logo on the side. That is not a custom detail. Kato was actually smart enough to put that on there. 6922 and one other SD40-2 number 6916 had the Falcon service emblem on their sides. The Falcon service was the CNW's high priority double stack and piggyback stack train service that ran between Chicago and Omaha, Nebraska. And believe it or not, that name survives on the UP. And while they call most of their hot shots on there that contain pig traffic to birds, any trains that are on the CNW system that UP still operates on that are completely 100% container traffic and do not have any pigs on them, those are called Falcons, reminiscent of the CNW days. This locomotive is a DCC only, like I mentioned earlier, no sound, unfortunately. It's too old and sound decoder won't fit in there. But still a nice smooth running locomotive and one of my personal favorites. This is another Kato SD40-2 that I have. This is a Burlington Northern number 6770. Now, I know most of my locomotives are CNW, however, I do also like the Burlington Northern. This guy is personally my favorite, well, my second favorite locomotive that is not in CNW paint scheme. This locomotive is a number 6770 Burlington Northern, like I said earlier. It's a DCC and sound equipped, and this is one of the few locomotives that I have that Kato actually still makes. And this is a locomotive has the ditch lights on it. Unfortunately, because my cat Theo knocked it off the train table, so therefore the ditch lights don't oscillate when you blow the horn. However, they'll still light up. This is my favorite non-CNW locomotive on my roster. This is a Union Pacific SD40T-2, aka a tunnel motor. This is number 4043, and that is correct for my era because at the time UP did not have their SD70Ms numbered in the 4000 and 5000 series. And when they did have EMs, this locomotive was renumbered. This locomotive is an Athern ready-to-roll locomotive. It's a DCC, no sound. However, I might put sound in it, and I'm strongly thinking about it. And it's a smooth running locomotive for an older Athern. Granted, it makes a little bit of noise, but just about all Atherns do. However, still, despite all that, definitely one of my personal favorites. This is my other tunnel motor. Like the previous one that you just saw, this is a SD40T-2. This is an ex-Union Pacific, Helm Leasing, number 6112. This locomotive doesn't fit in with my era at all. It's an ex-Southern Pacific locomotive, so unless even when it was repainted to UP colors, the CNW was already gone. Also, it says it was rebuilt by GE, meaning that because when UP sold these locomotives, GE rebuilt some of them, and this has the GE builder's plate on them. I mean, it's a nice detail, but just doesn't fit with my era anyway. But I mean, it's a nice locomotive. It's just that UP only sold these off in 2010, early 2011, so it's way off for my era. I've considered selling this, and right now it's kind of up in the air, but I might keep them. But this locomotive is DCC and sound, and it's an Ather ready to roll. This next locomotive is a Kato SD45, number 6544. This locomotive is DCC only. However, I do plan on putting CNIB sound in this locomotive really soon. However, as when this video was made, it is DC only. Here's an interesting fact about this locomotive is that this 16544 actually lasted on the CNW roster all the way until UP bought the railroad. And then I don't know what happened to it from there. It might have been rebuilt into an SD40M-2 or something like that. But all I know is that if you're modeling the CNW in the 1990s, this locomotive will fit in your era because it lasted all the way until the UP. And CNW did start selling off some of their SD45s right like a few weeks before UP bought them. However, this locomotive and about almost all the roster survived until the UP bought CNW. Congratulations, you made it to the end. This is my last locomotive on my roster. This is a Kato C44 9W, Chicago Northwestern, number 8659. This locomotive is DC only. However, I plan on putting DCC and sound in it, and hopefully I can get the CNW K5H on it, but that's probably not going to happen. But this locomotive is an older Kato. Sadly, they don't make this anymore. They were going to release 8646 and 8701, and I had ordered both of those, but typical Kato, they canceled the HO scale version of it. So I got cheated out of getting 2 more C44s, but still at least I've got this one. However, despite being an older Kanto model, this one actually does have ditch lights on it. They don't oscillate, but still have them. Nice to see them on there. But this is the last of the locomotives on my roster, so thanks for sticking through the whole way. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.